The alien's clawed hand struck without warning. Kira stumbled backward, her boots scraping against polished stone as momentum carried her toward the platform's edge. The drop yawned behind her, 30 meters straight down to the ceremonial courtyard below. Her fingers clawed at empty air. The predator species ambassador, Velkarn, didn't even glance back as he shouldered past, his scaled bulk filling the narrow walkway leading to the Empress's observation deck. Then hands grabbed her waist and yanked. Kira gasped as she found solid ground again, turning to see who'd caught her. A human, male. Taller than her by half a head, with dark hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd spent years in deep space. He wasn't looking at her. His eyes tracked Velkarn with the focus of a predator watching prey. "Stay back," he said quietly. Velkarn had already crossed half the platform when the human moved. No warning, no hesitation. He simply sprinted forward and drove his shoulder into the ambassador's lower back with the full force of his momentum. The impact echoed across the platform like a thunderclap. Velkarn, easily twice the human's mass, lurched forward. His claws scrabbled against stone. The human's hands found the ambassador's armored vest and heaved. For one frozen heartbeat, the massive alien teetered on the edge. Then gravity claimed him. The screen that followed cut through the afternoon air like a blade through silk. Kira's legs refused to move. The human stood at the platform's edge, chest heaving, hands still outstretched from the throw. Around them, the observation deck had gone absolutely silent. Even the ceremonial guards, 8-foot-tall Crithian warriors bred for combat, stood frozen in their positions. At the far end of the platform, seated on a throne carved from a single piece of midnight stone, Empress Jaraket watched. The Crithian monarch hadn't moved. Her 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern across her elongated skull, remained fixed on the human. Her scaled hands rested motionless on the throne's armrests. The elaborate crown of woven metals and precious stones caught the light, but her expression revealed nothing. 30 seconds passed in absolute stillness. The human turned from the edge. Blood trickled from his knuckles where they'd scraped against Velkarn's armor. He didn't wipe it away. His gaze swept the platform, cataloging threats with military precision before settling on the Empress. He walked toward the throne with steady, measured steps. Every guard's hand moved to their weapon. The sound of safeties disengaging clicked through the air like insect wings. The human didn't slow. He crossed the platform's center, past the ceremonial pillars marking the court's boundary, and stopped exactly 3 meters from the throne, the traditional distance for formal address. Then he dropped to one knee. His right fist pressed against his chest, his head bowed. The gesture was perfect, textbook Crithian military courtesy reserved for addressing royalty. Kira had spent 6 months learning that salute. This human executed it flawlessly. "Your Majesty," his voice carried clearly in the silence, "I formally request political asylum within the Crithian Dominion. I am Lieutenant Marcus Chen, former officer of the Terran Alliance Navy. I offer my service and loyalty to the throne, and I accept full responsibility for the death of Ambassador Velkarn." Empress Jaraket's smallest eye, the one positioned lowest on her face, twitched fractionally. It was the only indication she'd heard him. More silence stretched. Kira counted her own heartbeats. 20, 30. The guards remained frozen, waiting for orders that didn't come. Lieutenant Chen stayed kneeling, his breathing slow and controlled despite what he'd just done. Finally, the Empress's primary hand lifted from the armrest, one scaled finger extended, pointing past Chen toward Kira. "You," the Empress's voice was pitched low, melodious and utterly cold. "The one he saved. Approach." She forced herself to walk forward, acutely aware that every eye tracked her movement. When she reached Chen's position, she matched his formal salute, dropping to her knee. "Name," the Empress commanded. "Kira Nakamura, Your Majesty, engineering specialist attached to the human diplomatic mission." "You were pushed." It wasn't a question, but Kira answered anyway. "Yes, Your Majesty." Why? Why had Velkarn shoved her? She'd been standing in the designated area for junior diplomatic staff, exactly where protocol dictated. She'd done nothing wrong, said nothing, hadn't even looked at the ambassador. "I don't know, Your Majesty." The Empress's eyes shifted to Chen. "You saw what happened?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Then you acted?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "You killed an ambassador of a sovereign species during formal court proceedings? You understand the implications?" Chen's voice didn't waver. "I understand this will likely trigger a diplomatic incident, possibly a military response from the Velkarn Consortium. I understand your government may be forced to execute me as recompense." I acted anyway. Why? He met the Empress's gaze directly, a breach of protocol that made the nearest guard hiss in warning. But the Empress made no move to stop him. 'Cause she was going to die, Your Majesty, and I was the only one close enough to prevent it. The Empress's fingers drummed once against the armrest, a single tap, barely audible. Captain Thelrix? She spoke without looking away from Chen. One of the guards stepped forward, saluted. Your Majesty. The body? Death was instantaneous. Witnesses? 47 members of the court, 73 security personnel. All recordings are being compiled. The Empress finally looked away from Chen, her gaze sweeping across the assembled court. Diplomats from a dozen species stood along the platform's edges, their faces reflecting various degrees of shock, horror, and calculation. This moment would ripple across the galaxy within hours. Clear the court, the Empress commanded. All except the human diplomatic mission, my personal guard, and these two. The dismissal was absolute. Within minutes, the platform emptied, until only 8 guards, Kira, Chen, and 3 other members of the human delegation remained. The senior diplomat, Ambassador Hayes, looked like she wanted to speak but wisely stayed silent. Empress Zarakate rose from her throne. She stood nearly 9 feet tall, her ceremonial robes flowing around her like liquid shadow. Each step she took resonated against the stone. She descended the 3 stairs from the throne platform and walked directly to Chen, who remained kneeling. She stopped close enough that he could have touched her robes. My son is 7 years old, she said, her voice soft enough that Kira had to strain to hear. He was standing beside that pillar. The Empress pointed to a decorative column 20 feet from where Velkarn had shoved Kira. He wanted to watch the ceremonies. I allowed it because I believed this platform to be absolutely safe. Kira's blood turned to ice. The platform's edge curved. If she'd fallen, her trajectory would have carried her sideways before dropping. She would have struck the pillar where the young prince stood. A human body falling from that height, at that angle, with that momentum. You didn't save just her, the Empress continued. You saved my child. My heir. The future of this empire. Chen's expression didn't change, but his shoulders tightened fractionally. Captain Thelrix, the Empress spoke again. Your Majesty. All angles. Slow motion. I want to see exactly what happened from the moment Ambassador Velkarn entered the platform until Lieutenant Chen threw him off. The guard produced a holographic projector. Images flickered to life in the air between them. Kira watched herself standing at the platform's edge, reviewing notes on her datapad. Then Velkarn appeared, moving with purpose toward the Empress. But his trajectory was wrong. Too wide. Too close to Kira's position. The recording slowed. Velkarn's shoulder made contact. Kira stumbled. Chen lunged and caught her, but the momentum still carried her backward 3 steps. In the background, partially hidden by the pillar, a small figure leaned forward, the prince, curious about the commotion. If Kira had fallen where Velkarn clearly intended, she would have struck the pillar directly. The prince would have been crushed between her body and the stone. Again, the Empress commanded, focus on Velkarn's approach. The recording replayed. This time Kira saw what she'd missed before. Velkarn's eyes, all 6 of them. They weren't watching the Empress. They tracked the pillar, tracked the small figure behind it. He saw my son. The Empress's voice carried an edge now, sharp enough to cut. He deliberately chose a trajectory that would cause her to fall into the pillar. This wasn't carelessness. This was murder. Assassination. Ambassador Hayes finally spoke. Your Majesty, if we may, your lieutenant prevented a direct attack on the Crethean throne. Under our law, he is not only innocent of any crime, he is owed a blood debt by the crown itself. She looked down at Chen, still kneeling. But you didn't know about my son? You couldn't have seen him from your position. You acted purely to save this woman's life. Yes, Your Majesty. Why? Because no one else was moving. Because in that moment, doing nothing felt worse than dying for doing something. The Empress studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she extended her primary hand. The gesture shocked every guard into rigid attention. Rise, Lieutenant Chen. He stood, his eyes level with her shoulder. The Empress's hand remained extended. In the name of the Crethean throne, for the preservation of the imperial bloodline and the prevention of regicide, I grant you sanctuary, citizenship, and the rank of Imperial Guardian. You will serve in my personal guard. You will train my soldiers in human combat techniques. And you will help me understand why a member of the Velkarn Consortium would attempt to murder my son during a diplomatic function. Chen stared at the offered hand. Accepting meant leaving humanity behind. Accepting meant becoming part of an alien empire. Accepting meant committing to a war that almost certainly waited in the shadows of this assassination attempt. He clasped her hand. I accept, Your Majesty. The Empress's grip tightened. Good. Because we have much work to do. She turned to Kira. You as well. Rise. Kira scrambled to her feet, her mind reeling. You were the target, or the weapon, or perhaps both, the Empress continued. Either way, you're now a critical witness to an act of war. You'll remain under Imperial protection until we understand the full scope of this conspiracy. She released Chen's hand and returned to her throne, settling into it with fluid grace. Captain Thelrix began a full investigation into Ambassador Velkarn's movements over the past month. Who he met with, what he discussed, every communication he sent or received. I want to know who ordered this and why. At once, Your Majesty. The Empress's gaze swept across the remaining humans. Ambassador Hayes, I suggest you contact your government immediately. Explain what happened here. Make it clear that Lieutenant Chen acted in defense of the Crithian throne and is now under my direct protection. If Earth wishes to protest, they may take it up with me personally. Hayes nodded slowly. I'll send the message within the hour, Your Majesty. See that you do. The Empress's attention returned to Chen and Kira. You two will remain here. I have questions, and I intend to ask them while events are still fresh. The dismissal was clear. Hayes and the other diplomats retreated, leaving Kira and Chen alone with the Empress and her guards. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the platform. Somewhere below, technicians were probably cleaning up what remained of Ambassador Velkarn. Kira's hands shook. She clasped them behind her back to hide it. The Empress noticed anyway. You're in shock? Natural. Captain Thelrix, Brynwater. The guard moved with surprising speed for someone so large, returning moments later with a crystalline pitcher and cups. Kira accepted one gratefully, sipping the cool liquid while trying to process everything that had just happened. She had almost died. The prince had almost died. An ambassador was dead, and somehow, impossibly, a human navy lieutenant had just become an imperial guardian of the Crithian Dominion. The Empress watched her drink, those 4 eyes missing nothing. Tell me about your work, Miss Nakamura. What brought you to my court? Kira set down the cup carefully. I'm an engineering specialist, Your Majesty. My team was evaluating potential technology exchanges between our species. Specifically, we were examining your quantum shielding systems. And you have expertise in this area? Yes, Your Majesty. I wrote my doctoral thesis on multi-layered energy dispersion matrices. Your shielding technology is the most advanced I've encountered. The Empress's smallest eye focused on her with sudden intensity. How advanced? Advanced enough that several species would pay dearly to possess it. Advanced enough? Kira trailed off as understanding crashed over her. Advanced enough to kill for. Indeed. The Empress stood again, descending to Kira's level. You were scheduled to tour our primary research facility tomorrow. You were going to see the shielding generators themselves, not just the public specifications. Velkarn knew this. Chen's voice cut in, sharp and analytical. He wanted to either kill her before she could gain that knowledge, or make her death look like an accident that would derail the technology exchange. Maybe both. Precisely. The Empress began to pace, her robes whispering against stone. The Velkarn Consortium has been petitioning for access to our shielding technology for years. We've repeatedly refused. They lack the mathematical foundation to properly implement it, and we won't risk the technology being reverse-engineered incompletely and sold to the highest bidder. But humans have that foundation. Your species might actually be capable of understanding and improving upon our work. The thought terrifies half the galactic community. Kira's mind raced through the implications. Humanity was still relatively new to galactic politics, barely a century past first contact. They were militarily weak compared to established powers, technologically innovative but resource-poor, and diplomatically isolated. Access to Crithian shielding technology would shift that balance dramatically. How many species knew I was scheduled for that tour? She asked. The Empress's expression turned grim. 12 ambassadors were briefed as a courtesy, standard diplomatic protocol. It never occurred to me that any would resort to assassination. Your Majesty, Chen spoke carefully, with respect. If the Velkarn Consortium wanted to prevent the technology transfer, why not just lobby against it? Why risk an assassination attempt during a public ceremony? An excellent question, Lieutenant. One I intend to answer. The Empress gestured to Captain Thelrix. "The investigation will take weeks, possibly months. In the meantime, both of you represent valuable intelligence assets and targets. You'll be housed within the Imperial Palace under full guard protection." The Empress was right. If someone wanted her dead badly enough to attempt murder in open court, they wouldn't stop now. Chen seemed to reach the same conclusion. "Understood, Your Majesty. What are your orders?" "Recover. Tomorrow we begin preparing for whatever comes next." The Empress moved toward the platform's exit, then paused. "Lieutenant Chen, one more question?" "Your Majesty?" "Even for a moment?" Chen met her gaze steadily. "No, Your Majesty. The decision was made the instant I saw what he'd done." "Good." Something that might have been approval flickered across the Empress's face. Hesitation kills. "Remember that in the days ahead." She departed, leaving them with Captain Thelrix and 2 other guards. The captain studied them both with unreadable eyes. "Follow me," he said finally. "Your quarters have been prepared." As they walked through the palace corridors, Kira's mind churned. Somewhere in this elegant maze of power and politics, someone had decided she needed to die. Someone had weaponized an ambassador, turning a diplomatic function into an assassination attempt. Someone had been willing to risk killing a child prince just to prevent a technology transfer. And now she was trapped at the center of whatever conspiracy had set these events in motion. Chen walked beside her, his expression distant and thoughtful. Blood still stained his knuckles. He'd killed today. Thrown an ambassador to his death without hesitation. And somehow, impossibly, that action had saved not just her life, but possibly prevented a catastrophic blow to the Crithian Empire. "Thank you," she said quietly. He glanced at her, surprised. For what? For not hesitating. For doing what no one else would. "You're welcome. Though I didn't expect it to end with me joining an alien Imperial Guard." "Life comes at you fast, apparently." He flexed his damaged hand experimentally. "Think they have decent medical facilities here?" Your Majesty's personal guard receives the finest care available," Captain Thelrix interjected, having overheard their conversation. "Your injuries will be treated immediately upon reaching your quarters." They continued in silence through corridors that grew progressively more secure. Checkpoints, biometric scanners, guards at every intersection. Whatever else happened, the Empress clearly had no intention of letting anyone get to them easily. Their quarters turned out to be a suite of interconnected rooms with a shared common area. Luxurious by any standard, but the windows were narrow and reinforced, and Kira counted at least 4 guards positioned outside. A medic appeared within minutes to treat Chen's hand. While the alien physician worked, Kira stood at one of the narrow windows, looking out over the capital city spread below. Lights were beginning to sparkle as evening approached. Somewhere down there, news of what happened was probably already spreading. An ambassador dead. A human granted emergency asylum and citizenship. A technology transfer that might reshape galactic power structures. And underneath it all, a conspiracy that had nearly succeeded in murdering her and a child prince. She thought about the tour she'd been scheduled to take tomorrow, the shielding generator she'd been so excited to examine, the breakthrough that could have propelled her career into the stratosphere of human engineering achievement. Now, that opportunity might have cost her everything, or changed everything. She wasn't sure which frightened her more. Behind her, the medic finished with Chen's hand and departed. Chen joined her at the window, flexing his newly bandaged fingers. "They're good," he admitted. "Barely feels like I broke skin punching through that armor." "You broke skin punching through Velkarn armor?" Kira turned to stare at him. "That stuff is rated to stop small arms fire." He shrugged. "Adrenaline is a hell of a drug." They stood together in silence, watching the city lights multiply as darkness claimed the sky. Tomorrow would bring questions, investigations, and probably threats they couldn't yet imagine. But for now, in this moment of unexpected quiet, they were alive. That was enough. Captain Thelrix appeared in the doorway. "Your evening meal will be served shortly. Her Majesty requests your presence at dawn tomorrow for initial debriefing. I suggest you rest while you can." "Will we be questioned separately?" Chen asked. "Together, initially. The Empress wishes to observe how your accounts align and where they diverge. It will help establish the truth of what happened." She had nothing to hide. She'd been an innocent bystander who nearly became a murder victim, but the weight of what came next pressed down on her shoulders like physical force. She was a witness now, a key piece in whatever investigation would follow. And judging by the Empress's reaction, that investigation would shake the foundations of galactic politics. The food arrived, alien cuisine adapted for human consumption, surprisingly good. They ate mostly in silence, exhaustion finally catching up to the adrenaline crash. When the meal finished, Chen retreated to his room while Kira remained in the common area, her mind too active for sleep. She pulled up her personal datapad, reviewing her notes on Crithian shielding technology. The specifications she'd studied seemed almost mundane now, stripped of context by the day's violence. But underneath the equations and energy matrices lay something worth killing for, worth dying for, apparently, if Chen's actions were any indication. She wondered what drove someone to make that choice, to put themselves between danger and a stranger without hesitation. Military training, certainly, but there had to be more to it. Some fundamental belief that certain actions were simply right, regardless of cost. Her datapad chimed softly. A message from Ambassador Hayes. Are you all right? The Empress's guards won't let us see you. We're working on getting you home as soon as possible. Kira stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'm fine, but I don't think I'm coming home anytime soon. I'm a witness to an assassination attempt. The Empress won't let me leave until she understands why it happened. The response came quickly. Understood?
We're coordinating with Earth government.
Sit tight and cooperate fully. We'll get you through this. Sit tight. Cooperate. Get through this. As if it were that simple. Kira set down the datapad and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. An Empress would ask questions. Investigators would piece together a conspiracy, and somewhere in the shadows, whoever had ordered Velkarn to push her would be watching, waiting, planning their next move. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt something else. Something harder and colder than fear. Determination. They'd tried to kill her today. They'd nearly succeeded. They'd been willing to murder a child to achieve their goals. That ended now. Whatever investigation followed, whatever dangers lurked ahead, Kira intended to see them through. Not just as a victim or witness, but as someone who refused to be silenced by fear. She opened her eyes and looked out at the city lights again. Tomorrow, the real work began.